welcome to today's session. Our guest that's with us today is Robyn Ramsell. Hi Robyn, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you.
Good, good. Robyn, please can you start off by telling us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
So my name's Robyn. I work as a coach. My speciality, I would say, is trauma and loss, but essentially anything, major life events. I help people who've generally been through formal counselling or therapy, and then they come to me and we look at the future, how we can build on their experiences, give them strategies and ways to move forward positively.
Oh, wow. So can you give us a little bit of background? What led you into becoming a coach?
So I was a police officer. I worked for Met Police for my sins, and then came out to the counties with Thames Valley Police. I did just under 7 years. It was amazing. I loved being a police officer. Really, really proud to have served. The biggest challenge I had was I wasn't mentally equipped to manage what I was exposed to. My policing career wasn't extraordinary. It was normal day-to-day policing, what girls and boys are out there doing as we speak. There's obviously the major incidents, but it was the constant drip of incidents, just the destruction that you see and the sadness and the human pain. I didn't have a way of managing that. So I would go home, I'd drink, I would, drink, which I just didn't have healthy strategies, which led to me breaking. In 2015, I had what I describe as a breakdown. I was diagnosed with PTSD. And I guess it was that moment of, there was two major things really that made me see what had happened. A colleague of mine, fantastic colleague of mine, took me to one side on a night shift and just said, "You're not yourself. What's wrong?" And it was the first time that someone had actually asked the question, and I felt like they really meant it. And he waited for the answer. And that was the moment where I thought, "Do you know what, you're right." And I was angry. I was so angry with everything. And I had zero regard for my own safety. I would go into situations on my own that I probably shouldn't, because that filter had gone. It was almost like I was constantly in red mist, constantly fighting for me. And then my husband said to me that I changed as I put my uniform on. So I'd go up in half blues, which trousers, and put my hair into a bun, and he said you could watch me physically harden as I did this, and that hardness didn't always stay at work. He wasn't in the police, fantastically supportive, but I didn't want to be yet another broken police relationship. And at that point, the damage was too done, and I resigned. I left. What I've done now is I've worked as a coach for a housing association, which has been so eye-opening for me. I formalised my qualifications in coaching, and I now want to be part of the solution, because there is, in my opinion, a mental health crisis within the emergency services, particularly police officers. Suicide rates are high and just not necessary, in my opinion. And it's not a case of getting counselling. Counselling's available, it's brilliant. But you need to learn how to manage with seeing that fatal car crash. You need to learn how to manage being called everything under the sun, people spitting in your face. You just need to be able to process that in a really healthy way, which I personally don't think you're taught.
Can I ask you a little bit about your kind of personal recovery journey? What did that look like for you? What kind of support did you access?
The police were really good. They referred me to a psychiatrist, the force psychiatrist. I saw the mental health nurse. So I did a lot of what I refer to as traditional therapy, and it was great. We went over what had happened, how I was feeling, and we went over it and over it and over it. And I got to the point where I needed more. I didn't want to talk about what I'd seen and what I'd done. I wanted to move forward. I wanted to leave that behind me. And that's where I discovered coaching, really. Um, because it's about the future. It's about saying, okay, I accept what's happened. I've processed what's happened, but how do I stop this happening in the future? Because we can't stop traumatic events happening. And we can't stop loss happening. It's life. But what we can do is get ourselves strong and in a position that when life happens, we can manage it in a really healthy way.
Yeah.
And accept it.
So, what kind of signs and symptoms might there be around kind of being affected by trauma and loss?
Okay. So, signs and symptoms is a really hard one because it is so individual. I personally felt angry, paranoid, scared. It's that fight or flight. And I think it's really individual how people are affected by it. The biggest thing that I have learned is the traumatic event happens and everyone's focused on that, but it's the ripples that come after that that are the real key points, I would say. There's the obvious. I would struggle to sleep a lot of flashbacks. A lot of the pain would come out once I'd had a drink, argumentative, wanting to fight the world. But I would say the most important one is actually really asking yourself, are you okay? Because it's not always a big feeling. It could be a really subtle feeling of just discomfort, of not feeling yourself. And that's the point when actually you could say something's not right here. You don't need to get to crisis. And I think that's the biggest problem within the police service. It generally takes someone to get to crisis before there's any intervention.
Yeah.
I needed help 5 years before I was fundamentally broken. But I would never ask for help because there is a culture of you just carry on, particularly being a female. I didn't want to be seen weak, and that was my hang up. No one else's. They're very inclusive. But I didn't want to be seen as anything other than strong. Even though, if I'm honest with myself, I knew I wasn't at that point.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit more about your sort of individual coaching style?
So I would say I'm incredible. It's all about forward. So very pragmatic, strategy based. It's saying, okay, you are at the point where you're ready to move forward. I'm not a therapist. I think it's really important that people do that foundation work of counselling, particularly when you're dealing with trauma and loss, because they're big things to deal with. And then it's looking at, for that individual, how do we build for the future? How do we look at what works for them? And how do we make you really resilient for what life's going to chuck next?
Fab. So what advice would you give to somebody? What would be your top 3 tips of, I've experienced trauma or loss. I know I don't feel right. I don't feel like myself. But I really want to move past this. What would you say to somebody?
it's really easy to sit here and say talk, but I know when I was in the situation, the last thing I wanted to do was talk to anyone about it.
Mhm.
The best thing I should have done is to talk about it. And I think it's the more people that talk and the more open we become about the effects of trauma and loss and grief and dying, and the more comfortable we will get with helping ourselves. It's not a dirty word. It's not, it shouldn't be a taboo subject, but I believe it is still.
Mhm.
So yeah, my number one would be talk to anyone, even if it's to start with the dog, the cat, anyone, but say it out loud. Number two is check in with your mates. You're in a job, particularly the police, the frontline, the emergency services. If someone seems like they're a bit off, or so-and-so's really grumpy, or he's really grumpy last night, take the time to buy him a cuppa and say, mate, are you okay? And really mean it, and be prepared for the answer, because you've got to look out for each other. And we're very good to say hashtag it's okay not to be okay, but what are we actually doing to help each other? So yeah, I would say that's really important. And number three, it doesn't have to just be traditional counselling. You don't have to just go and see a counsellor or a psychologist for them to go over and over and over and over what has happened. Get yourself prepared for the future, get yourself strong. My situation ended my career. I loved policing, but I'd got to the point where there was too much damage and I couldn't carry on. I regret it massively leaving. If I could go back, I'd probably go back. But it's about arming yourself with the mental strength. So you get ready for work, you put your stab vest on, you've got all your kit, but it's the kit up here which is really going to keep you going and keep you really well. So we go for the run, we go to the gym. Mindfulness works for some, it doesn't work for me. I'm better with more physical strategies, things that I do. But yeah, I would say that's my top three.
Fab. So what you talked about how mindfulness doesn't, isn't your thing, and I think that's, a really important point to sort of bring out. So what does work for you? How do you kind of take care of yourself, keep yourself resilient?
I listen to my body. I just pay attention, I guess, is really important to how I feel. Trauma is very often, and well, it's a physical, biological thing, trauma. It's about an imbalance in your internal system. I know that I now get vertigo. So if I'm under too much stress, my hearing goes, and then I get vertigo. I now know if I listen to my body properly, I know that's going to happen 2 days before it does. I go for walks, and I'm working really hard to walk slower rather than rushing everywhere. And it's all very well saying you can do yoga. The problem with yoga for me is I really struggle to shut my head down. So I'm better in the garden, because it gives me something to concentrate on rather than lying on the floor with all these thoughts popping in. I wouldn't say I'm fixed either. It's been 5 years. It's constantly working at it. Anxiety, all of that is still happening, but I've got it under control.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important is that personal awareness of what trauma and loss invokes in you, and the physical and mental response that has, and being able to say, hang on, I'm off. Why? Oh, could it be because of? what do I need to do to bring the balance back?
Yeah, brilliant. No, I think there's been some really amazing messages in there around you know, listening to yourself, being able to reach out to other people, and kind of all of those little things that we can do to help us prepare for what life is going to throw at us in the future. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your time.
It's my pleasure.
Please please subscribe, leave us a comment if you've got any questions, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.